Hello and welcome to Jill HB and Friends. I'm Jill Harvey Bush, and today my friend is Karen Bek, who is a basketry and willow weaver. And I want to really find out, how did she come to do this? Is it something she's always wanted to do? And what's actually involved in making a willow basket? Karen, thank you for joining me today. As I said in the introduction, I'm really looking forward to finding out how you got to do what you do. Did it start as well, I've got a million questions. Did it start as a hobby? Have you always done it? Is it something you learned at college? Where do you want to start? Because willow and weaving is just so fascinating.
It is. I came into it a little bit sideways, really. My background is in completely different fields. So I started off in education research. Um, I then went back to uni and did my master's, and then had a couple of children, and then decided that I wanted to follow a non-academic path, because I was all set to do a PhD. I cancelled all of that and decided I actually wanted to be a gardener. That's what I'd loved forever, and everybody kept telling me, "Oh, don't waste your qualifications, go and."
Mm.
But it wasn't what I loved. I didn't want to be an academic. I wanted to be a gardener, so that's what I did.
I
And
think that's important, isn't it? It's so much. I mean, so many people these days are pushed.
yeah,
University, academic, you've got the intelligence, go do it.
yeah,
And I just think that's such a shame, which
yeah.
is why it's lovely to hear that you've come that route and decided completely against it. You say cancelled a PhD, but you do use some of it, don't you, as sort of social and therapeutic
I,
horticulture?
I mean, it. I would never. I don't regret doing my degrees.
No.
I absolutely loved them, and I think they prepared me really well for what I do now. And the job that I left to do this was in therapeutic horticulture. So I managed two projects in Norfolk, for adults with mental health or learning difficulties. And I did that for 10 years and absolutely loved it. It was a really
Mm.
difficult decision to give that up to focus on the basketry. But I did, and I'm glad I did. Um, but every step of the way, I've used every qualification, every work experience, and has prepared me really well to work for myself, but to work with people as well.
So did you go into gardening? Because you said you were looking to go into gardening and people were saying, don't do it, don't waste your qualification. And personally, I don't think any qualification is ever wasted. When people use that expression, it really annoys me. No qualification is wasted. So the gardening, and then you say the basketry, was that an interest, something you'd come across?
Well, I went and worked in a garden in Norfolk on a private estate and met a wonderful guy called Bob, who was the head gardener. And he's still a willow weaver now locally. And he taught me how to make an obelisk out of willow that was grown on the grounds. And it just never occurred to me that you get a load of sticks and you weave it into something amazing. And he did all these lovely sculptures for the garden, and we basically just used willow for everything, even marking the rows of vegetables and growing beans up. So that sort of sparked my interest. So I, started planting bits of willow at home and then using more at home. And then I just fell in love with the idea of baskets, and I wanted to make a basket. So
When you say about the willow, can I just go back? Well, you say I just planted some willow. There's lots of different sorts of willow, isn't there? Because this is me just being interested
um,
as to how do you decide what to grow?
so I just grew what I had available to me. So you can literally take a cutting in the winter, about a foot long, plant it half deep in the ground, walk away, and a year later it's 12 foot tall. I learned to be more selective, going into
Hmm.
there are particular some willows are great for basketry, some willows are great for fencing, some are great for sculptures. There's like hundreds and hundreds of varieties.
And is that just research then that tells you what you wanted, or asking other people?
Yeah, a bit of both. There's a national willow collection at Rothamsted, and they grow hundreds and hundreds of different types. So you can find out quite a bit of information from them. Asking other basket makers, going on courses, just on Instagram, when people are making baskets, asking them what varieties they used. And then you get to know the ones that you really like. So I started planting a couple of willow beds on my allotment of the varieties that I really liked but couldn't get hold of commercially. So now I grow about 40 varieties, only on a small scale, but it's enough for me
For
to
you.
a bit interest in my basketry, growing like purples, blues, and greens, and so it's not all brown twigs. And they all feel slightly different, and they all have different properties. You can do a zigzag weave; it can go back on itself. Some will snap when you do that. Some are stronger than others, and just a range of colours. And in their living form as well as their dried form, they're the most amazing genus of plants that all have different colour catkins in the winter.
Oh, watch this space to my husband, because we've got a big garden to fill. And I think he kind of knew what might be coming. I was talking to another friend, and they've got a woodland. This was just recently, and she was saying her husband Scott has been trying to get rid of the willow, and he keeps saying, "I can't kill this willow." And then I was saying, "No." And so they've now said, "Jill, come and stay and come and have a look, and what I can do with it."
England, it's probably like goat willow or crack willow, which is no good for basketry. That's often what we find growing wild around here.
Right, absolutely. And then you just did courses, as you say, it started with Bob and doing the obelisk in the garden, and then you learnt from him, or what
Um,
did you go on and do?
I started just looking on YouTube for videos and getting to grips with what it takes to make a basket, and very quickly realised that you can't really learn from a video, not when you're starting. So I applied to go on a course that was subsidised by the Worshipful Company of Basket Makers at Easton College in Norfolk. It's actually in Suffolk, it's their Otley side, with a tutor called Joe Hammond. And I think it was either an 8 or a 10-month course, just once a month. And then you get sent away with homework in between. And that got me started, on learning all the basics of sort of round willow basketry. And then I just kept going on courses with tutors like Sue Kirk, who's in Peterborough. She was sort of my nearest one, so I learned a lot from Sue. And I still go on courses now. I'm going on one tomorrow with a basketry goddess called Jenny Crisp, who's
I'm
like,
sure as I get into basketry, these names will become big names to
yeah,
me.
must look up Jenny's work and Sue's work. And yeah, there's a whole clan of like, in the basketry world, they're really, really famous. So yeah.
And it's learning new skills and techniques from them. And again, I think basketry and weaving, having travelled, I've been quite fortunate in my life, having been cabin crew, etc., to have travelled quite a lot. And it seems that there seems to be different weaves or different ways of doing things in different countries. Would I be right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So baskets have been made for millennia in every country of the world, and they're basically made from the materials that grow locally. So, whether that's willow, hazel, palm trees, bamboo, and every country and every region within a country will have its own particular style, or, some baskets that are linked to particular areas. Like in Great Yarmouth, we have baskets for the fishing industry.
Mm-hmm.
In Devon and Cornwall, you'd have like lobster pots.
That's right.
They're all different because every basket has been designed for a particular purpose. And when you start to look at how they've been designed, so whether that's in the strength of the weave, or how extra rods are inserted, or the shape of it, or the handle, or they've all been designed for a particular purpose. And that tells us a lot about our social histories. So, for example, the Great Yarmouth herring swill is a massive basket, and it was designed so that when the women were bringing the fish up from the port to the town, that they didn't have to move out of each other's way in narrow alleyways. They could just walk past each other.
Wow.
and to also, because they were massive baskets, they would have been full of herring and really heavy. They didn't want to have to be moving out of the way. So, lots of things like that tell us a lot about our social histories. And then I got really hooked. It was like, wow, there's like a whole, history behind that basket. So what does it tell us about the people that used them, or the people that made them, or yeah. And then that was me and them. I think that was my academic background, thinking, well, hang on, what does this tell us about how things used to be, or where
Yeah.
people made them.
So were you still gardening at the time, and then, because are you full time now? You do basketry full time now?
Now, yeah, I was still, so I was just sort of teaching myself and going on courses, and reading every book, and just trying to keep myself going on the basketry, and but working full time as well. And then it kind of started because my daughter was going, she had to fundraise for a trip to Thailand, no, Costa Rica. She was fundraising for a trip to Costa Rica with the school, which she ended up not going on because of COVID.
Oh,
I'll make the baskets. If you come and help me at events, whatever we make, you can have as a fund, to put into your fund. And then discovered that people were actually wanting to buy what I was making.
shock horror. The look on your face there was like, oh God, people actually wanted to buy them.
Nice, yeah. So we did that for a couple of years, and then I just got busier and busier. So the more I turned up at events, the more orders that came in, then more people wanted me at different events, and I sort of started to enter a world of, artists and designers and makers and craftspeople, and
Moving over into the creative side of society, if you like, for want of a better word.
new for me. I've always been creative. I've always wanted to make things, but then feel like I finally found what it was I wanted to make. And
When you started, did you buy willow from somebody? Again, because if, looking at myself and wanting to start, I wouldn't have a clue really about where to get the willow from. You hear about people saying, like the person who's coming to run the course at my house in a couple of weeks, about, I need to know numbers because I need to soak it. And so it's about learning all of that, really. It's not just the basketry, is it? It's the everything else. So did you buy it?
Yes. So I buy from a company in Somerset Levels called Musgrove Willows. So they're a huge commercial grower of willows. And I still use them, even though I grow a bit of my own. I can't grow enough for the number of workshops I do. I still order from them. Really good quality willow, really reliable, really helpful when you phone them. You couldn't. So as a novice, you just phone them and say, this is what I want to make. What do I need to order?
Right.
They're really, really helpful. And then you get to know, the quality of their willow and what it will do and what it won't do. And so it's a really reliable source of willow. Although I have just made contact with a more local, because obviously I'm in Norfolk, they're in Somerset.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make my business more local to me. So hence some of my own. But I have found a more local grower who's North Suffolk, so not too far. So his willows sound interesting, so I'm hoping to use more of his as well. And then I use a lady's willow, funnily enough, in Scotland. So right on I think she's west coast, because it's the most beautiful willow. But weirdly enough, we found out that there was a guy who lives in her village that visits relatives near my village. So he drives it down when I need it. So I feel a little bit less guilty about
the carbon footprint.
Yeah. So if he's coming anyway, I give him some money for petrol, and that worked out. But her willow, it's called Barfad willow in Scotland, is the most amazing quality, really beautiful colours. She sells varieties that Musgrove willows don't sell.
And again, did you just find out about her from other people?
I think I was just looking. I think I needed willow at short notice, and Musgroves, because everybody used them, they were sold out of what I needed at the time. So I just Googled, willow growers, and found her. And I said, look, I know you're a long way away, but do you do postage? And she's lovely. And then when her willow came, it's just so beautiful, and because it's a different climate, it's different.
Hmm.
Yeah, really intense colours on her willow. So I still treat myself to buying a.
Hers every now and then.
So yeah, every year I say, please send me a list. What have you got?
So you're full time at it now, as you say. You started to get busier by accident, really. So in some ways, COVID and your daughter going on a trip did you a huge favour in allowing you the time.
Yeah, I think even before COVID, I knew I was going to go into this full time because I'd been sort of making and selling. People kept asking me to run workshops and come on new events and things, and I was thinking, will this be, can I sustain this?
Yes. Can I make a living out of this, and can I keep this up?
So I just thought, okay, well, I'll do both. I'll keep working and I'll run the business as if I'm full time, and I did that for about 2 years, and yeah, that's not sustainable. So something had to give, and I there was no way I was giving up the basketry. And as much as I love my job, that's what gave. So almost 2 years ago, I handed my notice in and started this at full time. And yes, it is sustainable. I am earning an income. I have a very long order book. I do loads of workshops that sell really well. Yeah, I couldn't have asked for more, really. Sometimes it's a bit overwhelming because it's just me and there's lots to do.
But ultimately you're happy doing what you're doing, which I think is priceless, really.
Yeah.
When people say about it being sustainable in terms of life,
Yes,
I think, yes, I deal as a coach, I deal with people who are so stressed out in the big corporate jobs, having been there myself. And I think there's no price that you can actually put on as a salary for the happiness that you have when you're doing something you really, really love, health wise, every wise, really. Impact on family, isn't it? The whole family life thing as well.
that was really important to me. I've been a single parent for 12 years, and I've spent most of their teenage years saying, yeah, no, in a minute, or I've just got to finish this, or I've just got to make a phone call, I've just got to see if
Mm.
else is okay. And that hit me quite hard during COVID because I continued to work during COVID, because our project was outdoors and we were safe.
Yeah.
But my children were off school, and they were at home, and they were really struggling. And I felt like I was going to work to support people with their mental health while my children were at home waiting for me to come home to support them with theirs. Yeah.
And actually, who was supporting you in all of that?
Fortunately, I had a really great manager, and I have
Good.
a lovely couple of really good close friends, and the woman that I job shared with as well. Although we weren't able to see each other very much because we were, across sites, but yeah, it was okay. But that kind of, I thought, right, well, I've got one last opportunity here to spend some time with my kids while I'm still working. So I did. I resigned and did this.
And took the jump.
Yeah, took the jump, which was it's really scary when you're salaried to go to unsalaried.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's worked out fine, and I can be flexible with my time. So if my daughter needs me to run her somewhere, I run her that.
You can do it.
And I can say, actually, you can order that basket, but it may take me 2 months to get to it because I've got a really long list of other priorities.
I think that's really important, though. But if customers want it, and that's what's nice, in some ways you can control the overwhelm, can't you? It's managing, for me, as I said to my own clients, it's managing people's expectations is huge.
Yeah.
It's not over promising and then under delivering. It's being very honest up front and saying, well, if I lose that order, another one will come in anyway. If I've got a long order book, then I'm not desperate for that work.
Occasionally people are, they don't want to wait that long, so I'll happily recommend other basket makers. But what I can't, I'm not in a position to say, well, I can make that 10 times quicker than I thought originally, because you just can't.
No, no. And do you find it quite a physical job? Because again, I've been watching, people and having made just one basket. My goodness me, it really takes some arm strength. I can't, it's definitely
physical. See, I'm all strapped up on my hand at the moment because that's a bit injured, but it is really physical. Just, even the growing and the sorting and the soaking but then the actual making of baskets. So I tend not to make massive baskets with really thick willow because your hands take
But strength.
yeah, and there are plenty of other basket makers doing a brilliant job of all those things. So if someone comes along and they want a huge, strong basket, I'll refer them on because I know
Yeah.
hands won't do that at the moment. But yeah, it is very physical. People are always surprised when they come to a workshop just how strong your hands and arms need to be.
And do you think that builds up over time as well? Obviously, like anything else, the more you do it, the stronger your arms get, the muscles, which again, thinking, being a woman of, a mature age for me, it is looking at, actually, that's a good way of keeping up muscle strength and something that you really enjoy doing. You say now you're soaking your own willow. So if you buy willow and that comes in, like you're saying, you buy it from Musgrove, when you buy it in, then do you have to then do something with it before you can use it? This is a complete novice saying, do I just order from them and woohoo, I'm off making a basket?
Not quite. So on the time of year that you order. So when they start cutting December, they then, it's very quickly available to buy as fresh cut willow on their website. But you can't make a basket with fresh willow because there's a lot of shrinkage that needs to happen. So as it dries out, if you'd made a basket with it, it would reduce.
Shrink and crack?
Well, you'd get a really rickety basket.
Oh, okay.
So you make basket, you can use it for like, outdoor sculptures or, things like that. That's absolutely fine. But for baskets, you don't want a rickety basket. So if you're buying it fresh, you're going to need to dry it, and that can take sort of several months. Or you can wait till a bit later in the season, and then they sell dry willow, which they call, I think on their website, it's called brown willow, which just means dried out. And then you need to soak it. So it's roughly 1 day per foot of length. It a little bit depends on the variety. So some varieties take longer to soak up than others. And it'll also depend on the temperature. So if you're soaking outside, it will depend. If you're soaking in winter, it's going to take a lot longer than that. If in a hot summer, it can be much quicker than that. So you get to know sort of, it just comes.
You get to know the feel of it in the end, that it looks right or it's ready.
Yeah, and you can tell, if you can take it. What I tend to do is put it in before a workshop. Say in the summer, I'll put it in 8 or 9 days before a workshop. And on like the 6th and 7th day, I'll test it. So if you can bring it out and flex it without it cracking, it's probably okay. So then leave it to mellow for a couple of days, which basically means just leave it somewhere cool and dry, and then try it again, and then it's probably ready. And if it's a new variety that I'm not quite sure about, I tend to soak 2 batches so that I can definitely make sure it's ready for the workshop, because there's nothing turning up to a workshop and all your willows shredding the bark or it's cracking because you haven't soaked it long enough. So because it's always going to get used,
Yeah. And did you have to buy, there's a special things, because you're talking about very long rods. I know when I first did my very first willow weaving workshop, we suddenly realized why we needed to all space ourselves out after I'd poked, I think, the lady on my left in the eye, and I poked the lady on my right, in the arm with, okay, we need to spread.
Yeah.
So do you have special equipment that you buy to put the willow in to soak it? It just sits in the back garden?
Had an old bath in the garden, but they're obviously only so long, so it was a case of, right, well, soak the thick end first, and then after a couple of days it's soaked enough you can sort of bend it all in, but it was a complete faff. So when I went full time, I did buy 2 8-foot, I guess they're like cattle troughs, water troughs, like galvanized. So they're in the back garden now, and I use them.
Just off eBay, was there a special place you buy? Because I can imagine going to the local farmer saying, if you've got a cow trough I can have, please.
Yeah, you can try. They sell. They're a bit fashionable. That's the trouble. They quite a lot of money second hand. It was actually cheaper for me to buy them new, and I think it was a cultural supplier I bought them from. So yeah, just look up farming supplies, feeding troughs. Just make sure it's galvanized and that it has somewhere where you can let the water out. So my
Right.
little
Like a little plug or screw or
little nut and bolt, because otherwise you're going to be bailing out the water. Because especially in the sun, it goes green. So after every couple of soaks, I'm changing the water, so the water goes on the garden, and then you got to fill up again. So put it near a water source as well. I've got an outside tap, so
mine would be probably the water butts, although we use those on the garden, to be honest. So we've got, watering all the plants. And you said that you keep the bark on the willow. Do you ever? I mean, I'm thinking of the strip the willow. I can hear, it used to be a song, I think, isn't it? Or a dance. It's called Strip the Willow. With my husband having been in the folk scene for a while. But you keep the bark on, or are there times when somebody will strip the willow? I
yes.
think that's the word, isn't it, for stripping the bark off?
So stripped willow, you can buy buff willow, which is basically willow that's been stripped of its bark. And Musgroves do a really nice version of that. They call it buff noir. So it's a darker one, because stripped willow, I don't use it very much because I don't like the colour of it.
Right.
That 1970s orangey brown, that wicker hampers are made out of.
Yeah. And it used to be the curved baskets in the 70s.
Yeah.
Everybody had, those very curved
Yeah.
baskets in there. That was really cool to have one of those baskets to go shopping.
Yeah, and strip willow's got its place. I just, aesthetically, I don't like the look of it. I prefer white willow, which is also stripped. But
Okay.
it's a process to strip white willow. So they would cut it, and instead of letting it dry, they steep it in water pits until about May, until the sap rises again the following year. And then they strip it, because once the sap's rising, the fibres are white. And white willow's, very beautiful. So I will use that occasionally. But for beginners, so when you're going around your uprights or whatever, it tends to grip and stay in place more, whereas bark on willow doesn't grip. It can be a bit more difficult to control until you get the hang of it. So
a lot more strength needed to pull it into place and weave it around.
And it's just a slightly different material, really. So but it's good to get used to both.
And have you made your own designs? Because you say often people are asking you for a certain type, so you've now come up and making your own patterns and designs of baskets.
We call them our own, but obviously they're just variations of historical baskets. That there have been a few, like what we would call heritage baskets, I guess, that I've learned to make, which I love, like the washing mound and a quarter cran, which were all fishing industry baskets. And there's hundreds and hundreds of designs. So if you want, an oval shopper, it's like, I don't think I've ever made two the same. So
well, also because you're working with natural things, aren't you?
Yeah, and a lot of some basket makers, they make particular designs that are based on traditional. They make those all the time, and they're perfect and they're great. But I can't. I just don't like. I get bored. So
make a mix of. And I can see, I mean, obviously the listeners can't see you, but you're sitting on the floor. Well, people I've seen tend to sit on the floor when they're making baskets. Is that the best position?
It's what I find more comfortable. A lot of people use a plank. Sometimes I'll use a plank, sometimes I won't. I just find it doesn't feel very natural to make a basket sitting at a table. But that's how we end up teaching most people is, we'll teach them on a chair and a table. Say to people, if you're more comfortable on the floor, just sit on the floor. Because, you can use your knees to clamp your basket together and, get a grip on it. And
okay, that was the question, because sometimes, think sitting on the floor all day might not be the most comfortable. I don't remember it being comfortable at school, and in my day in assembly, when you had to sit cross-legged on the floor. And again, I suppose it's just good because it's movement, isn't it? You're moving all the time while you're weaving. And that was another question that was going to be, is it because it makes it easier to be able to use your legs in that way, as you said, to grip and
Yeah, because a couple of points, like I have a base here that I'm about to stake up, and once you've staked it up, I tend to sort of just sit flat on the floor, and that basket will go between my legs while I'm doing the first wailing on it.
right.
It just
And wailing, I know, is the first weave. Just
yeah,
for anybody who doesn't know,
yeah,
they're called whales, aren't they? And I don't mean WHALE, but I think it's WALE, if I remember correctly. And you have a 2 or a 3 whale, don't you?
yeah.
Depending on how many. Are they called weavers?
Yes, or depending on how many uprights and stakes you've got, it's a process of spacing out your uprights so that they're in the right place for your weaving. So it kind of locks everything in at the bottom.
How many do you think you do during a day, or does it depend? Because you say if you
It depends. Depends on the complexities. I mean, if I'm doing like a fruit basket or something, you can make 6, 7, 8 if I really wanted to. I don't do batches of things because I just get quite bored. So I'm a bit of, I'll do one of them and then I'll make a lampshade, or I'll do one of them and then I'll weave a hair. Or the worst thing in the world is when somebody wants an order of 10 identical something, because it's totally doable, but it's so boring. So I tend to like, if I take it, I say, can I just vary them? Can I vary the weaves on them or the colours on them, or
yeah.
otherwise it's just really dull.
Do you find it quite meditative to do because you're concentrating? I mean, just from my own very, very limited, as I say, one basket, I found that it was quite meditative. I had to focus on what I'm doing, and obviously being a coach and a mindset coach, and people who suffer from anxiety and stress, I find that it's just doing that one thing, like gardening. When you're out there,
Yeah,
it's just that you're concentrating on,
yeah,
and I can see that it would be really good for mental health in that way.
for mental health, and that's a bit of my work that I wanted to keep from my last job, because I started teaching people at my project how to weave, just little things, and then even baskets, and there were a few of them that were really, really good at it, and it's something I want to keep building on, because it is really restorative for mental health, because you have to concentrate. If I run a workshop, after about the first 20 minutes where everyone's selected their materials and them the first steps, it's quiet, completely quiet, because everyone is concentrating. And while your mind is so focused on something else, whatever is troubling you outside of that is not in your mind for that time. And people always say to me, "Oh, I really switched off today," or or they're really tired because they've concentrated so much. But it's been like a real lift for them, because everything else was in the background for a little. It's still there. They've still
Yeah,
back to it, but it's a lift.
it's like respite from it, on that way. And it's something that I think ought to be introduced far more when people are looking at stress and everything in the workplace. And I believe that with, more senior managers, having been one myself, that actually to offer something like a workshop in basketry and weaving, it just literally clears the mind of everything that's going on. I did a woodworking, like a 6-week woodworking little course, and interesting, there was a guy on there, top corporate, and he said his family had bought it for him so that he could actually switch off and completely relax. And it was really funny when we were there. He was saying, we'd listen to what we had to do, and we'd watch what we had to do. No, now go back to your tables and do it. And he said, how come I can remember everything corporately, but between Mark telling us what to do and getting back to the table, I've completely forgotten. And he admitted it was fantastic just to be able to switch off for that couple of hours
And be
once a
told what
week.
to do as well.
Yes.
You haven't got to make any decisions. it's just somebody saying, right, next you're going to do this, and everyone's nodding, going, next we're going to do that.
Yeah. And then get back to their own baskets and go, what was it we were meant to be doing? Was it round 2 behind 1? Which one am I going?
But then that's what I'm there for. People say, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't do this. It's like, you're not stupid and you can do it, but you don't do this every day and it's completely new. And you just have to allow yourself to be a student for a little while. It's perfectly okay. And you're not going to make a perfect basket on the first go. That's not what this is about. This is about, a process of starting to train your mind and your hands to form a pattern. And then
I think that's part of the problem, don't you, these days as well, that everybody wants everything to be perfect at their first attempt.
Yeah.
Rather than actually going, do you know what it's called? Practice.
Yeah.
It's this instant society that we've got to do it now.
Yeah, if everyone could do it first go, I'd be out of a job. So I really wish I'd kept my first baskets so that I can take them along to workshops and say, you think yours is bad, look at my first ones, because they were terrible, and I literally threw them on the fire. They were awful because I was learning.
And that's, I think, the thing to really get through to people, isn't it? Particularly if they're used, they're further up and they can do things without thinking about it, that actually this is a process that's called, I trained in NLP with Dr. Bandler, and when we were training and we then did all the assisting, I was lucky enough to be assistant on his courses, and he always used to emphasize it's called the NLP practitioner for a reason, because you go away and practice. You cannot do this straight away. And that's something that's always stayed in my mind, that people think they see a demo like you doing it and think, okay, right, I'll go and do that and I can do it perfectly. And then they beat themselves up because they can't. But as you say, it's getting the mind and the coordination to work very differently. It's like when you first learn to drive, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, having recently my daughter to drive. Yeah, it's definitely like that. But it's also, trying to say to people, it is okay for you to not have all the knowledge at the moment. We're always supposed to feel super confident, to perform at our best and all the rest of it. And it's like, just let go of all of that, because you are a complete novice and I'm here to show you how to do something. So just allow yourself to be a novice and make mistakes. And there's nothing that isn't fixable in basketry. If you snap that bit off, we'll just put a new one in. If that bit gets a bit tangled up, we'll take it out and we'll put a new one in. Or if the shape's not quite right, that's fine. It's all about saying to someone it's okay just to not be perfect, and just to, it's still going to be a functioning basket at the end of it.
I mean, what do you enjoy most? Do you enjoy all of it? Sitting on your own as well as workshops? Which ones do you?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I meet the most fascinating people when I teach. There's always, it's usually people that haven't done it before, except I'm sort of getting a bit more of a returning customer base, which is like, oh, hi, it's you again. And you kind of know where their level is at. So, it's about bringing those people on. And I'm just about to set up a short course as well. And I'm trying to sort of set up a community of people that are interested. They don't have to be full-on basket makers, but to say, come along for 6 sessions at whatever rate it is. I'll teach you the basics, and then come along to more sessions where you don't need as much help and don't pay me as much. So that students and kind of members, that you build this sort of community of people who are all interested in this kind of thing, because there's not many basket makers in Norfolk.
I'm really surprised.
Yeah,
I thought there might be.
there's not many. There used to be hundreds. You look at the census in like 18 whatever it was, and there were hundreds and hundreds. But plastic killed that off. So
oh well, let's hope that it's going back. That's very much why I'm looking at, very interested in the heritage crafts. And it's the sort of thing that I think if I had been at school and somebody had told me about this, or I had practiced in it, I'd probably been far more interested. And again, I think it's about sort of exploring that with youngsters, isn't it? That actually there is more out there,
Yeah.
and that if they're not on the really academic side and very, focused, my son always wanted to be an engineer and knew it from a very young age, so was very focused on that. But if they don't know what to do, then I'm encouraging some of my younger clients to say, have a look at other stuff, go and do a day course and find out if you like it, and what are the possibilities and the trades and the heritage crafts, and because I think that's important.
It is really important, but what's frustrating, as an ex-academic who looked at, opportunities for, disaffected youth, and as a parent of two children, is where in our education system are we providing any opportunities that don't turn us all into economic units? It's about getting your A level, or in any other trade, so that you can work for yourself and bring an income in. And we're all meant to be little economic beings. But there's no space in our education system for exploring anything outside of the norm. And that's one of the contributing factors to why our heritage crafts are under threat. Because unless you've got a family history, or you live in an area where rural craft is really celebrated, you're not exposed to the existence of these things. I'd never been exposed to it. I was originally from Essex and moved around, and just almost accidentally bumped into the fact, it's like, oh yeah, that's a basket. Somebody actually had to make that. That can't be made by machine. And then you fall down a rabbit hole of basketry, and you get interested in it. But there's nothing in our education system or the curriculum or that even mentions that there are people out there who are very skilled tradespeople who work knives and their hands and make everyday items that are also, exceptionally beautiful. The skill that goes into some of the more complex heritage crafts is
I
phenomenal.
think that's where
And
the repair shop program
that's helped.
has really helped and made people realize, oh my goodness, there are skills here, and dare I say it, people who want to be celebrities, I want to be an influencer, I want to be on TV or on social media or whatever, is actually there is a route using these skills and crafts. And as the program's developed, they've brought more and more people in, and you can see the skills. So whether kids watch it of that age, of course, is another question. But again, I think that's where shows, when you're going to events and shows and working at those, it really helps as well. That recognition of, but then on the other hand, people don't want to pay. Well, I could get a basket in wherever for a couple of quid. Why would I want to pay that for a basket? So again, it's that mindset, isn't it?
There is. But I think it is part of our job as basket makers or any allied craft to explain to people what goes into making a basket, why it's made in a particular, and why it's important that we don't lose all that. When the basketry industry declined in, the 50s and 60s, a whole generation of basket makers who had the knowledge of how to make particular baskets had no one to information onto. And we're now desperately scrabbling these days to find that knowledge in a basket, to unpick a basket and figure out how it was made, because there's no one left to tell us how to do it. And there are big projects going on, with the Heritage, I think it was the Heritage Craft Association, did a report a few years ago about the state of basketry, and they've created a list of types of baskets, and they'll show you what's on the endangered list, the critically endangered, the red list for baskets. And it's really, really sad that all these are incredible baskets
Just been lost.
Some of it's been lost. But there are people like Claire Rivera in Wales. She heading up the Heritage Baskets project for the Basketry Association, and she's put a lot of work into reviving a particular basket whose Welsh name I shall probably mispronounce, but I'm sure it's the Kintath or something like that. I'm sure someone can come along and correct me later. And it's the most beautiful round woven frame basket, which makes it sound really simple, but it isn't simple at all. But she's taught lots of people how to make that now. So, hopefully now it's not on the endangered list, and it's a really popular basket as well. So,
and it's never too late to learn, is it?
no, it's never too late to learn. I didn't start making baskets until I was like 40, about 10 years ago, I guess. And it is a lifetime's occupation. I can see why it takes someone a lifetime to learn.
But there's always something to
all the
learn, isn't there? As you say, it's learning about all the different willows that you're already coming across, 10 years on. It's learning about the different baskets, learning about heritage. It's developing your own kind of skill as well on that.
And then basket out of a different material. Like, I'm fascinated by Asian baskets and bamboo and how they prepare the material. And I mean, just Google it on TikTok or YouTube, or they start off with this massive piece of bamboo and they split it with like machetes, and it's paper thin by the end. It's just phenomenal, absolutely. But I then pick up a different material to try baskets in, because that's a whole other like world of, I've had a lifetime to do it, and I can't get obsessed by anything else.
But that's what's so lovely about it, because as I was saying, it occurred to me, when you do go around the world and you see other baskets, and now I'm going back in my head thinking, yeah, I have seen, made with palm trees, and I have seen them made with this and different sorts of things. I mean, I did hand caning. So I wanted to know a little bit about hand caning and using the canes, and where do you buy those from? So, and I've done a couple of chairs, and I find that again very kind of meditative, because you're having to really weave. But it did make me laugh when I did it with lovely Rachel.
Those chairs are beautiful as well. I know a few chair caners, and the patience you must have to do those. I've done a bit of rush work on the seat for myself, but not in cane. And the patterns are so intricate. Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, and it is that when you get so far and you lose a bit like concentration on a basket or whatever, and you go, uh-oh, that's wrong.
Yeah.
unpick.
And that's what I find is the only time I truly want to be on my own making a basket is if I'm learning something new, a new complicated weave. I don't want someone walking in the house trying to have a conversation with me, because I've lost the plot then.
Karen, it's been lovely to talk to you. So how do people find you? What are your courses? You say you're in Norfolk.
So I'm in Norfolk. I mean, I live just outside of King's Lynn, but I do work all over Norfolk, and I do work in Cambridge as well. My daughter's at uni there, so I like teaching in Cambridge. I used to live there and never appreciated just how beautiful it is, and now I go back more of a tourist, and it's lovely.
But sometimes when we live somewhere, we don't appreciate it. It's like when I used to rush into London for corporate stuff, and I'd run past St Paul's and never really, it's St Paul's, but I'm busy working. And it's only when friends used to come to stay and we do the touristy thing that you kind of go, oh yes, the Tower of London. Oh yes, there's Tower Bridge, that type of thing. So where can people find you? Give us your website, social media, courses you're running.
It's karenbekwillow.co.uk, and my surname is spelt B-E-K. There's no C.
Right.
You'll find the same on Instagram and Facebook. It's just Karen Bek Willow. All my workshops are on my website. There's more going on soon for all the Christmassy stuff.
You said the C word.
I'm not the world's biggest fan of the C word either, but
it's popular.
It's popular at Christmas. I do like the Christmas workshops because it's lots of little things and it's hanging up things and it all looks very sweet. So I quite like the Christmas workshops. So all my workshops are on there. I have got a basket shop on my website. There's never anything in it.
Because you're so busy making other stuff.
Yeah, basically, I can't. I'm just making all the time so that I can put enough stock on the website, but also have enough stock to take to events. But between making for events and making for commissions, there's not not much else going on. And I sell through a couple of shops in Norfolk, and a company called Figure and Skills, who are online. They're a sort of curated collection of all kinds of different craftspeople. Again, I haven't got anything with them yet because they're on my list of things to do, but they're a great company for checking out for craftspeople.
Sorry, what was their name?
Figure and Skills, really, really good, really, amazing people to work with, great curators of craft and art and lots of events. I think they've just been really busy at London Craft Week this last week. So,
I mean, when you talk about events, how on earth do you know how much stock you take? I mean, do you go, we were talking about this event we went to recently. How on earth do you know how much stock to take and what happens when you run out, if you run out?
it's however much I can fit in the car, be what I take. So if I've got to put a gazebo and a couple of tables in there, then yeah, I have to act carefully and strategically. You never know. You think, like you'll go along to one thing and you'll sell loads of sculptures and a couple of baskets, and then you'll go to another one and sell loads of small baskets and no sculpture. You can never tell. So I just take a bit of everything and just happy that it never sells out. There's always something you can, fill your table with, even if it's just a box of stars or something.
Do you ever sort of weave while you're there so people stop?
Yeah, always, because people want to, otherwise how do people know? When people say, do you make all these? Because it's like, well, I don't want people to think that everyone who's at a craft event is bringing in a load of imported stuff.
Yeah.
They need to know the people and I tend to only do events now where everything is handmade, because I think it's really important that people understand that you don't need to ask that question at those events, that everything that is on a table in front of somebody has been made by that person.
It doesn't have made from another country on a sticker underneath it somewhere.
Yeah, because the times I go to events, or I've been at events and then since declined to participate, and I've been around stores and I've found myself asking, do you make these? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So if I'm sure, I probably don't want to buy it, because if it's advertised as an artisan craft event, I expect to meet that artisan there.
Yeah, good point.
So yeah, and then when you find the made in China labels on things, it's like
doesn't quite fit.
Somebody who's not here to be represented made that for a lot less than you're selling it for, and that's not okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Karen, lovely to talk to you. I've learned an awful lot. I can't wait to get into it either. My poor husband will be thinking, oh God, what next?
Honestly, it's there's a whole other world in just willow basketry. You should definitely dive into it.
You've given me some of that kind of more motivation, if that's possible, to say, yeah, I definitely want to do it. I mean, that's what it came about, me just contacting somebody locally. And you're quite right, actually, trying to find somebody locally that I could do a course with was very difficult. And then luckily him saying, well, yes, I've got a property and that's fine. We can all space ourselves out and not poke each other in the eye while we're doing it. So I can't wait. Great to talk to you. People to double check. So just give us your website again. It was just Karen Bek. There's no hyphens or anything in it.
No hyphens. KarenBekWillow.co.uk.
And they can find you on social media.
Yeah, exactly the same on social media. Just type that in and it'll come up with me. Probably, I think my avatar is probably a basket or something. It's never my face.
In which case it will be a basket on my website as well. Thank you so much for talking to me. I've really appreciated it. And I know we've taken up an hour of your time, which you probably have made another basket by now.
No, oh no, not in an hour.
If you listened to my podcast previously, you'll know that this is the reason that I do them, because I love to find out what's behind the skill, what's behind the love, what's behind the business that somebody is actually doing. And I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot more about willow, what's involved. It's not just a case of buy a bit of willow or grow a bit of willow and make it into a basket. So I want to thank Karen for passing on a lot of information, and that hopefully it will inspire other people like myself to go ahead and learn some heritage crafts, do a little course And it's also a very good way, actually, of meeting people, is what I found when I've done various courses. If you want to find out more about Karen and where she's going to be, courses that she's going to run, then her website, just to repeat that, is Karen Bek, and it's spelt BEK, Willow, so karenbeckwillow.co.uk. And you'll find her on social media at Karen_Bek, BEK_Willow_. And then you'll be able to find out a lot more about it. I've certainly got a lot of information that I'll be going on the hunt for and checking out the courses and some of the names that she mentioned to learn even more about willow and willow weaving. If you've enjoyed listening to myself chatting to Karen and want to make sure you get every single one of the episodes that I do, then please go to GillHB and Friends and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and here's to the next one.